Okay, so this is this weekend what I learned about Solr. I took a little bit of time to look at Apache Lucene and Solr. Lucene is the backend Java engine for matching or search, and Solr is a web service sort of wrapper around that, which is very nice. I really like it. So the basic concepts of setting this up, I'm going to try and do this here as you know I've already created one here called Vivtest. So I downloaded Solr 431. They have an example folder in there, and you can just go in there and do the example. But I'm going to try and set a one up here, and I'm just going to create something here, and I'm going to call it the test. Okay, so here's like a folder. It's a copy of the example folder. So in there's the cloud scripts. I haven't done the Solr cloud yet, and there's context. And what this really is, this is actually the Jetty start.jar. It's really Jetty, the Jetty server with a Solr web app. There's your Jetty's web app folder, and you got the Solr stuff in here. So it really is just a Jetty. And here I created a folder called docs, and in there I copied just a data file, all the presidents and stuff of the world, and it has a post.jar there. So that will be my data file. In here you can see as the normal Jetty stuff, web defaults, jetty.xml. If you wanted to run SSH, of course you had to create a key store. So this is a Jetty folder structure. The libs, which are all the Jetty libs, normal stuff for Jetty. The logs, which is just resources log for J, just a modified version to write it in there. And then there's the Solr, and then web apps. There's the Solr.war. And that really is all Solr is in this instance. It's a war file that runs inside Jetty. So so this is my folder, the test. So the configuration files are this one, Solr.xml, and this guy really just says admin cores, what do we want to call it, and we put it into a folder called the test. Okay, so I'm just going to go, the test is what I'm going to name my default call, my default core. And a core is like I'll show you in the UI of Solr. It's a set or a folder where stuff goes in. So here's a core. Defining a core here. The test. Did I call it the test? Yeah, the test. Okay, and it's the folder is called the test. Okay, so very basic from that perspective. So I'm just going to save that file. Then I'm going to go into the next file. This guy I'm going to, because I copied it over, I'm going to call it the test. That's a folder I'm going to put stuff in. And inside here there's a conf and a data folder, but I'm going to go into the data folder, and I'm going to remove everything there. So I'll get to that now. So then there's a zoo.configuration. That's Zookeeper, that's used for Jetty Cloud, for the cloud stuff. I'm not going to set that up at the moment. So then there's a subfolder here called the test. Like you saw, I just cleaned out the data folder, and then here's a conf folder. And in this conf folder are all, and this I just copied from the example, but here's all the stuff that you can, there's extra menus for, in the UI for admin. There's you can implement things like spelling words and stop words and synonyms. All these things you can implement here. So, and then you can say, hey, look in the synonyms for synonyms, or kill these words, or there's a spell, update the spelling of these words. So there's a lot of those kind of things, or doctor becomes dr, or st becomes street. That kind of stuff you can do all inside here, which is great. all of that's already there. Two important files here is the Solar Config Dot Xml, and that really just says, it has a lot of information in, but it basically just talks about configuring Solar. And I'm just going to see that I didn't put anything in there specific. Nope. So that file, is a configuration file, and then the next one is the Schema Dot Xml, and this is the important one. Now, what I could figure out so far, and bear in mind I've only worked with this for 2 days now, is you define your schema of what's going to be in this folder. How's your data going to look, or when you try and put it in here. So I've got a thing called the ID, I've got some text, I've got a name, and I've got this version field which it will auto create. Okay, so each one of these you've got to say what the type is. Will it be indexed, will it be stored, and is it required? So for ID I said, yeah, that's required, and it will be indexed and it will be stored. These guys, let me go open my text file, and to give you an idea of why I'm doing it this way. So if you go look at this file, there we go. So here's the file. It goes ID, comma, a Minister of Defense, comma, and the name. ID 16. So it has three, 1, 2, 3 fields. Thus, if we look in our schema, we can see ID, some text, and a name. If we look at this, it goes ID, some text, and a name. So makes sense. And then this version thing, which it will automatically create for me, and that's just a version of this record in there. You'll see that the type for that one, ID, I said string. I guess because I'm using number, I could have just used int or long or something there. Then these, I made the type text general and text general for the text and the name, and that's ID, the text, which is president, and the name, which is this name over here. So if we then go and look at that, so I made that text general, and then I defined, there's a string float long, but then I defined text general over here, and I say it's a Solar text field, and there's some stuff here which I'm still learning what it is, but and this seems to be where I'm implementing the stop. So I'm putting it through a standard tokenizer factory, and you can look that up. I'll make more videos on Lucene. When there's a stop filter factory, we're saying, hey, look in the stop words. If you see something there, then enable it or do something about it. And I also implementing a lowercase filter factory. So the data will go through these filters and tokenizer before it is written into the index. So that's how I define the schema. So that's it over there. So the next step really is, well, I've created the test. I have configured the files. So now I'm sort of going to go and try and start it. So cd the test, I'm in that folder, and there's a start or jar, and it says easier starting Jetty, java minus jar start.jar. So I'm going to try and start it. And that's it, Jetty has started. So from this point onwards, I can actually go and hit it. There it is. It's my instance, and it's called the test. It's there, up and running. There's some information about here. There's my memory and my swap space and my JVM. Logging, and so it says, hey, there's no warning, and there's no, so those things I'm still working on. There's my admin, my core, and this core is called the test. I can add more cores here, and again, that's the folder. So I created this core now called the test, that roughly translates to the test, this folder over here. That's called the test, and that's this core over here. So I can go add more of those folders, or indexes, Java properties, and there's a thread dump. So if I try to go in here now, we'll see that if I try and ping it, it pings in 2 milliseconds. If I try and query it at the moment, my response is going to be pretty much empty. What does the schema look like? There's the file we looked at, ID text version. What configuration file look like? Replication, this is if I have more of these set up, I can replicate this to other machines. Very nice. Looking at the analysis, I can go look at the ID field, and there's all sorts of analysis I can do here. And then looking at the schema itself, I can say, hey, ID, it's a unique ID and it's index stored, and some detail on that. But clearly there's no data in here at the moment. If I were to run a query, I get nothing. So my next step would be to try and load some data into this thing, and I'm going to go to this guy over here. So I'm going to go to the test, and then cd doc, and in here there's again is my CVS file which I showed to you, with 3 fields, and there's a poster jar. So you can do it with this poster jar, or you can simply run a curl, which is a HTTP post to so I'm going to say, hey, update, and go to this guy I just set up here, and it's going to put it into the default core or the default index, and it's going to put this chiefs directory file in there. I'm going to hit enter. You can see in the background it's working, and it came back and it says, hey, it's loaded. So so now, if I now go look at these guys, my cores, I can see, hey, there's a core version 3, and now we can suddenly say, hey, there's 6,400 documents in that core, and I can hit optimize. I'm not exactly sure what optimize does yet, but there's my core. It has 6,400 records in, so now all of a sudden I can go into my query, and I can hit query, and here's those guys we just say. So Hamad Karzai, and Afghanistan, and there's some details. It's printing only 10 of them at the moment. I can say, I want 100, a result of 100, and there's 100 of them, and you'll see how fast this is. So now here comes the nice part, is now you can start querying this. So in my world, where I do a lot of those fancy queries, I can start querying this in various ways. So I can, for instance, say name equals Jacob Zuma, which is the president of South Africa. If I hit that, it comes back and says, there is a few things. Here's a Jacob Zuma, which is a president. There's also a Jacob, education, and something about human affairs. Okay, that's not bad, but and in itself, that's not super. So now you can start doing things like, well, let's put this Jacob, but or this word Jacob Zuma. Well, let's take the word Jacob and put some weight on that. Say, well, only with a probability of 0.75, and let's take the word Zuma with a probability of 0.75. Let's try and execute that query. And now, I'm coming down to Jacob Zuma. This is the one. So let's try and spell this wrong. Jacob Zuma. Okay, well, pretty much still found Jacob Zuma. Okay, well, let's put this up to a 95 probability, and the last name up to 95 probability, and hey, now I don't find them anymore. So let's drop this down to a 85 and a 85, or 85 and a 95. Let's drop this down to a 75 and a 95 probability. and now I'm starting to find it. So now this makes sense to me in my world of scanning for names. So another great feature here is it already has you know, I can return the data in JSON. So there's the same query, and this is the actual query over here. So if I were to take that query and execute it, there's the result. So I can actually call this from any application with this detail. So I can say, yeah, no, well, let's put that up to 95 again and call it, and now there's no result. But you know what, let's take and move that down to 75%, call it, and now there's a result. So we can see there's a query string over here, which is super. And then also so I'm gonna go in here, name colon Jacob tilde 0.75 and zoom tilde 0.75 there, return the result for me on JSON, and there he is. And now I have one more feature which I like a lot, is this highlighting. So I can say highlight the name for me and put this to the beginning and this to the end of a name, and this is highlighting already implemented. So if I hit that now, I get Jacob Zuma, and there I can see the two things that it matched on as Jacob and Zuma. So if I were to drop this to 45 and 45, surely I'll get some more hits. Oh, I want, this is really a very unique name, but let's just say Bin, Jacob Bin. And there we can see some hit generated at 45. It matched Basim bin Yaku al Hamar, but it highlighted for me Bin and Yaqub because those are the two values that that it matched on. So if I were to move this up to maybe 75, I won't get it anymore. But if I Muhammad, I'll just spell it totally wrong, Muhammad, and I will say 45, and now suddenly I'll see a whole lot of hits. But here we can see all the parts that was matched. You know, all the parts are highlighted that was matched. And if, of course, if I move this up to 75 and 75, I'll get virtually nothing. If I drop this to 65 maybe, now I'm starting to see names again. So it's totally configurable, and again there's the names it matched on. So that's what I know so far. This is all backed by Lucene, and next I'll be looking at Lucene, but this really is a good place to start. Thank you.